welcome to my studio. We're going to have lots of fun with our project today. Let's get started. So for this project we're going to be using caulking, and I'm using Dab, the Alex Plus. You want to make sure this is white. And I pick mine up at Walmart. This is under $2 usually, and how I know it, because some of those get so mixed in, the last numbers are 101, so that is what I use. I also use an easy caulking gun. This makes it so much easier to use and to load over the other ones. I also use a frosting tip cover. This is kind of a newer thing. I purchased that at Hobby Lobby, and I can put that on the end and save it. And also my clippers. I just clip the ends off of the caulking with that, and then that makes it really easy to do, and we're ready to go. So we're going to be making our ribbon roses, and I really like using these on different projects. There's all kinds of things you can do with them. So we're going to start. I cut a bunch of squares of my parchment paper or wax paper. I've got my tray set up. When they're done, they go on the old craft tray there. I'm going to be using a flower nail with my squares, and I'm going to have double-sided tape on there so they go on nice, but I don't have too much so they're easy to get off. That helps support them while you're making them. We're going to start by putting our caulking. You can use an old plastic container. The nice thing about it is if you have a bunch of them, you can throw them away. If you want to reuse it, just soak it and reuse it. Now you can decide how much you want to do. I never do more than half of my gun. That way I can hold on to them, and that's easier to use. We've got the dog running scared in here. He's scared of his shadow. I'm going to be using rose. I love this color. I think this is a really pretty color. And we're going to be using food coloring. The reason is, I want to show you the rose color here. How pretty that is. I like that color. And the reason we're using food coloring is it doesn't change our consistency of our frosting. If you add paints, it takes a lot of paint, and then it changes the consistency of the caulking. And I will probably refer to it as frosting, so if that's okay, if I refer to the frosting, that's what I'm talking about, is the caulking. Make sure you have the white, not the clear. And we're just going to use an old butter knife. I get them at my thrift store. Don't mix your stuff that we use for this with your kitchen stuff. Anything that's done in this project, keep for craft purposes only. Don't mix them back and forth. So we're going to stir this real good, and remember the color gets darker as it dries, so it may not look that dark, but it's going to get darker. And if you have streaks of white through it or streaks of color through it, that's okay too. So we're going to be using the rose petal tip for this project. I'm going to be doing them small. I want tiny ones, so I'm going to be using a 102 rose petal leaf. So that's up to you. You can do bigger ones if you want to do bigger roses. So that's a personal opinion. I'm going to be using an adapter because a lot of times I use the leftovers with another tip, or change my tips out to a bigger or smaller one. That way you're not stuck with just that. And by that I mean just putting the tip straight in the bag, which you can do if you want to. And I'm going to use a little bit taller container. If you have a glass cup or a plastic cup, you can do this with it, and it's easier to get your frosting in. And I'm just going to get all of the frosting into the bag. So as we're doing this, we want the large part of the tip down towards the bottom, and you're going to be spinning the flower nail. And so we're just going to start putting it on here and start to turn it. And sometimes that's easier said than done. I'm having a little bit tougher time here today. And try and keep your tip straight up and straight down, and kind of pull it around. Now that's not a great one, but I try to start and stop in the same place with the center. We'll do another one here. So I've got to take this guy off. We're going to allow room for leaves as well. So we're going to start in the center here and start to turn our nail. And sometimes getting control of that nail is hard. I can start out good, but sometimes I kind of stop there, and you've got your rose going. I like to end it where I start in the center, so try to think about that, and that way you have them more consistent in size as well. We'll try to get another one going here. I may need some more tape on there. Spin it and push and spin it and push and spin it. So I think I'm going about 2 times around, and that one was much better. I kind of got back to where I started, and try and keep that straight up and down like we talked about, so the base of the rose isn't fatter than the other parts. So you just keep working these, and the more you do, the better they become. Even for me, every time I start a batch, practice makes perfect, as they say. So each one becomes easier to do, and each time it's different. Sometimes the frosting, the caulking, can be a little bit melted per se, and if that happens and you notice that it's a little bit, go put it into the freezer for 5 to 15 minutes. You don't want to freeze it though. So, but that helps kind of stiffen it up. But you don't want it too hard that you can't work with it. But usually you'll be able to do it. But if it's been really, really hot, and you try not to get that hole in the center either. You want to kind of make sure that first twist kind of matches, and you get the center completely closed up. These are one of my favorite little ways to do the roses. Roses can be very hard with the material that we're working with, because it kind of wants to melt. It doesn't want to hold the shape. These seem to do really well, and I love using them on faux cakes and different things like that. But don't think of just that. You could do jewelry and earrings, and just really think outside the box. So we want to get these done. We're going to probably let them set several hours until they're dry before we put the leaves on, just so they don't bleed into each other. So if you want a little bit of extra shine and sparkle to this, we're going to add some pigment powder to these. You can go buy Pearl X. It's in the scrapbook section of your local craft store. Bluewhale.arts also sells those. Bluewhalearts.com. I'm going to use kind of a pinkish purple color. You can use whatever color you like. The one thing you want to do is when you pick up your pigment powder, dust it off. See how much is in there? If you take that straight to your rose, you're going to have a ton. And we're just going to come in here and kind of hit the tops of these. Not too much, just enough. You can see how wiggy-woggy, like that word, I've got some of these. A nice thing about this technique is you can trim these off with scissors. So like this guy, when I get done here, I'll go and trim him with scissors. So, and then our leaves are going to add so much more. The reason we're not doing this before or while we put our leaves on is we don't want this pigment powder color in our green leaves. We're going to come back and do a little bit of that on our leaves as well. A real nice color is flamingo pink, and that looks really good with the roses, especially for our rose color food coloring. So that's a good one to use. So we're going to make our tiny leaves, and this is a leaf tip, and this is a 65. It's tiny, and it fits for our tiny roses. And I've already colored my frosting, and I used moss green, and I love this. And what I've done is I put a tad of my frosting on the outside of the leaf because, or excuse me, outside of the container, because it doesn't look like this color. But this is my favorite color, is a leaf green. It's almost a sage green. It gives it that delicate look to me. I really like that. So we're going to get ready to frost our leaves now. You could do a couple of practice ones if you want to. The nice thing with this is this evens out like this guy, this poor little rose. You could come in and put him on the side that's so wonky, and it kind of helps even him out. You could do one leaf, you could do 2 leaves, you can do 3 leaves. For what I do, I really like the 2 leaves so that's what I'm going to be doing today, but you can do however many you want to. So we're going to push this up against the rose. You want to make sure that it's connected, and you push and pull. Now this little guy usually does better with the small leaves. He usually doesn't split as much, but you can play with it. Sometimes I've found out if I kind of am pushing just a little bit and pull that, then I don't get that break. But isn't that sweet how simple that is? And you want to make sure that your rose was completely dry before you did that. But any area that isn't cleaned up, now this guy you could cut with the scissors a bit, but you can come in here and kind of cover that up, and then you don't have to worry about that just as much. And you'd be surprised what looks good. Don't worry about being so exact. Now if you get ones like this and you don't like the hole in the middle, you can save a little bit of your base color and just come back in with the frosting behind it and put that in and cover that up. So that's an option, but it doesn't show that much once you get it on your project. It's really, nobody will probably notice but you. So now you just simply go ahead and put your little leaves on. Now if you want them bigger or smaller, squish them harder for bigger and not as much for the smaller ones. Try and keep them consistent in size. So all your roses are kind of similar. I had a little booger there, so we're going to cover him up. And we're going to let these dry, and then we're going to add the embossing powder to them. So we're going to go ahead and do our pigment powder or mica powder, any green or gold or whatever you want to use for a highlight, and just do our little leaves just real easy and simple. I hope you had lots of fun and enjoyed that. If you ever have any questions, send us an email at art@miriamjoy.com. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our videos so we can continue to grow. God bless.